Good morning, everybody. I'm Joe Sira with STI, and I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar this morning. We're going to talk about the new eStatement enhancement from STI, and quite frankly, I'm very excited about this one. It's something we've been working on for a very long time, and Barbara Lee and her group, Lori, Eileen, the programmers, have been working diligently to get this product out into the marketplace. As everyone knows, patient statements that are mailed are expensive, easy to ignore, get lost, not delivered. There's a lot of issues with them, and the increasing postage rates every year make it even more expensive to send patient statements. And we also know that patient billing and collection is one of the hardest parts of running a medical practice. I've got personal experience. I have two boys. Whenever I mail them something, I have to call them on the phone to remind them to go to the mailbox to get whatever it was that I mailed to them. So mail can be ignored, but texts certainly can't. So this new enhancement allows us to send statements electronically as an email or as a text message. And more importantly, and what I like most of all, is the ability to send reminders as well as a patient statement to your patients. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori Gibson, who's going to tell you more about the product. I want to remind everybody that you are all muted. If you have questions, there's a chat function where you can actually send questions. And at the end of this, I'll be back to go through your questions and answer those questions. There'll be plenty of time for that. So without wasting any more of your time, I'm going to pass this over to Lori Gibson. It's all yours, Lori.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lori Gibson. If anyone doesn't know me, I'm one of the level 2s here. I've been with STI for just about 20 years now, and I love it. And like Joe, I am very excited about this eStatement billing because those of you that know me, the patient billing is kind of like, I guess I will call it my gig. So, and like Joe said, the eStatement is the actual image of a statement sent either via text message or email. So with that said, we can go to our next slide, Joe. Okay, here is where I think it kind of gets exciting. As you know, right now, printed statements are at 86 cents. A text message or an email statement will only cost you 23 cents. So you're saving 63 cents right there off the bat. Postage is going up in July, so by 5 cents. So you will be saving 68 cents come July. So I'm going to kind of go over like what, you're probably thinking like, oh, well, why are there 3 different things here? We have 3 different what we call journeys to the e-statements. The journey number 1, which is option 1, is, your first dunning, which all of these are first dunning only, no second dunning or beyond. It's only first dunning for e-statements. But with option 1, the patient's first statement would be sent via text. And then 10 days later, they would get another text saying, hey, just want to remind you, you have a bill due. If you've paid, disregard. Why I say that if you've paid disregard message is we are not sending accounts receivable information up to RevSpring, who is kind of the vendor that is handling the e-statements. So that patient may or may not get a reminder text, but it does say, please disregard if you've already paid. Option 2 is same thing, but email. So it'll send an email to the patient, and then 10 days later, they would get a reminder email. Cycles 2 and 3, they'll get a 14-day text reminder, but the statement would be printed on like that first day for cycles 2 and 3. So if it's beyond that first dunning, they would get a printed statement in the mail, and then 10 days later or 14 days later, they would get a text message saying, hey, pay your bill if you already have, disregard. Option 3 is what we consider our one touch. It's text or email based on what the patient desires for that first dunning with no reminders 10 days later. And, billing cycles beyond that first dunning would be a printed statement. In the event that, say, you have a bad phone number, a bad email address, it's that patient statement would not be lost. If for any reason a text or email cannot be sent to the patient, it automatically drops to paper and a printed statement would be mailed to the patient. Okay, next. How do we turn this on for our patients? There are 2 ways in Practice Manager to do this. The first way is what we call implied eStatement consent. That is under the administration preferences practice level and then the patient. What this would do is it would turn it on for all patients in the system that have a cell phone in the cell phone field on the patient screen or an email address on the patient screen. What that would do would put that cell phone address, their cell phone number and email address into your patient billing file, and they would receive either a text or email, based on what's available. And what's nice about that is also if text doesn't go through, they will try email if that is also available. So if the patient has both cell and email available, it would try, cell first, depending on which journey you selected. And then, as the backup, it would either email or text. You can also do this on the patient screen in the consent button on an individual patient basis. For, this might be better for offices with, you know, I will say more elderly patients that aren't so tech savvy, may not even have a cell phone that could receive a text or don't have email where, they may not want opt-in. And there are old-fashioned people that still want that piece of paper as opposed to a text. So you can do that on the individual patient basis as well. You can also, there's the option that, the patient doesn't want this. They told you that. So you can also set it on the individual patient that the patient does not consent to e-statements. Next. This is a sample of what the email looked like that the patient would get. Patient would get the email that says, it would say, hello from, Dr. whomever's practice. You have a new statement available. When the patient clicks the view your statement, they will be prompted to put in their zip code. Once they enter their zip code, the statement will appear and they can view that. Now, here's the part that I really like. If you have the patient pay online or a way for your patients to pay on your own website, you can put this in there. And here, like you can see it says pay online. They can either click it from here, or when they're viewing the statement, upper right-hand corner of the statement would also have a link for them to pay online, which is very nice. Next slide. This is what the text message would look like. And same thing, they would click that link to view the statement, put in their zip code, and an image of the statement would come up. Again, they have the option to pay online right from the text itself, or again, from the link that would be on the statement. Now, if you do not have the pay online option, well, for starters, we offer that as well. So you could sign up for that, or there would be no option to pay online there. It would just end at the, please view your statement. Next. This is an announcement flyer that we can provide to you so you can hang it in your office to kind of make the announcement to patients saying, hey, we're going digital, be ready. You're going to start getting your statements via text or email. Next. Things to know. I will mention, because I have not already, if you're wondering, how does this work? You still gather your patient statements the same way that you always have. You will still have the option to uncheck the patients you don't want to get a bill. Like, none of that changes. The only things that are changing are whether or not the cell phone and or email are put into the file that you send to us. You will still receive your confirmation email, which you should be checking, so you know that we got your file and it's being processed. If a patient decides to opt out, they could either hit the unsubscribe from the email, or they can reply stop to the text. You will be notified via a report that will go to the same email address that your confirmation email goes to opt out. You will be notified that, patient John Smith has opted out. You can go into Practice Manager onto that consent button and check off that, the patient has opted out to receive e-statements or texts. If you do not do that, RevSpring is smart enough to know that John Smith opted out. We are no longer going to try to text him or email him. We're just going to drop him to paper and print his statement. The really nice thing is you will also receive a report that says the text was sent or the email was sent. And the one that I really like is the email actually gives you a little more information than the text message. Because the text you just got that it was sent and delivered. The email, you will actually get that it was sent, that the link was clicked, that the email was opened, and that the link to view the statement was clicked. To me, this is like gold, because I know many of you have heard, I never received it from a patient that hasn't paid. The email thing that says clicked and opened, that is like your proof in the pudding that the patient has received the statement and they saw it. Again, I will repeat that it's only the first stunning, and in my humble opinion, it is much more user-friendly with the patient pay online. The patient can see the statement, click pay, and pay right there. And to me, it's seamless. For you, the office, you get your payments faster. And to the patient, they don't have to think about, oh, how am I going to print this out? Now I have to call the office to pay. Personally, that would bug me. And it's a cost savings. And like I said, quicker patient payments. And I will mention, we can go to the next, Joe. Here I put the enrollments to how to enroll for the e-statements. On there, you'll put your normal office name, select your journey, and I think that's about it. But I also put a link to the patient pay online option. What is nice about that is once you get everything set up with the patient pay online, you get your URL, we can print it on the statement. When the patient pays, those payments automatically come down into Practice Manager on the pending tab immediately. So you could send out your statements today, get paid today, and post the payment today with the e-statements. That's what I think is so wonderful. And at that, we can move on to the questions, and I'm going to turn it back to Joe.
Thank you for that, Lori. Appreciate that explanation. Let's open it up to questions. Chris, do we have any questions from attendees?
Well, there was one question. Maybe you want to just go over it again, if you could. Say we don't have a way for our patients to pay online. And then, go ahead.
Yep, if you don't have a way for your patients to pay online, one, I would encourage you to sign up for the patient pay online option. But the patient then would either have to phone you, like call you to make their payment, or they would have to find a way to print out the statement so they could return that top portion. Or they could even come into the office and drop off a payment, I guess would be another option.
And as a follow-up to that, how do we get a report of what was paid in order to post them?
For the Instamed, there are reportings on their website, which you would be trained on. But there's also that pending payments tab in Practice Manager where you would see all those payments, because they wouldn't post automatically. You have to review them before they post. So the patient goes to the link, which is, a website that the URL would take them to. They would make their payment. Instamed would process that payment and send it down to your practice manager in that pending payments tab. You would review that, say everything looks good here, post it to the charge that the patient wanted to pay, and then you could run your normal daily payment edit reports, because we usually recommend using Insta as your payment type so you would know which payments came through that patient pay online option.
What is the cost of the URL pay online for the practice?
The pay online costs varies depending on how much you want to take it. Do you want credit card machines in the office and all that? And that is all determined by Instamed. So if you were to enroll, there's no commitment for anything. If you were to enroll, Instamed would call you, go over what your office needs are, and then quote you a price from there. And again, no commitment to enroll. If you just want to get some information on the PPO, I would encourage you to enroll, talk to an Instamed rep, and then kind of decide from there. I think they kind of have various plans as to, do you want the minimum of just the ability for the patient to pay online? Do you want to be able to process the credit card payments in office through them? Those are all options that Instamed would give you the pricing on.
We have a third party, excuse me. Okay, let's go to this one. Are the patient statements reviewable before they are sent out?
Yes, that still works the same as it does currently. You would still have the preview statements gather, like when you start your patient billing, you would still do the preview. You could still see what's out there and uncheck any patients. None of that changes. That consent really just decides if the patient's cell phone number and or email are in the billing file that gets sent to us. But everything else still functions exactly the same as far as gathering and sending the file to us.
We have a third-party pay online feature. How does this work when using eStatements?
It would work basically the same. If you don't already have the URL printing on your statements, we can add that in. If you go to add-ins, patient billing, practice setup, in there you will see a line kind of towards the bottom that says URL. You would put your URL that takes you to your your own website, your third-party vendor's website, whoever handles your patient pay online. It would put that in there, and then that would be the link that it would take them to when they click that pay online option.
What are your fees for Instamed?
The fees for Instamed come from them, so we don't know. So you, again, would have to enroll to kind of find out what those fees are. And again, if you enroll for the Instamed Pay Online, it's not a commitment. You can, tell them, no, you're not interested. If you think the cost is too high, that's all up to you.
Okay. Are patients automatically enrolled and we have to unenroll them, or do we enroll them? Also,
That is that, if you want to go back to that consent screen.
Sure.
This is where you decide, that the patient decides. If you have patients that, you'd rather ask each individual patient what they would prefer, you would do it through the consent button on the patient screen. And where I have it highlighted there, you would either say that they want to do it for via text, they want email, or they do not consent. If you want them to do both, you would just check both the via text and via email. Now, if you wanted to say you want it for all of your patients, if they have a cell number and email in the Practice Manager, you can come to that practice level preference and set that implied eStatement consent. And that would put any patient that has a cell number or email, it would put that information in the file, and then all of those patients would get either the text or email based on what's in the file.
we use our bank online pay, we use our bank for online payments. Would we be able to use that link for patient payments?
If it is a link that the patients can currently go to and make a payment, yes, you could put that link on your patient statements. The same way through that add-ins, patient billing, practice setup. You can add that to the URL. As long as it's something that the patients can click on and make a payment, you can put that on your statement.
Okay. We would create our patient statements file as usual, and your system will disperse them as paper or text/email, depending upon how the patient is set up. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep, that is correct.
Okay. So I am understanding this correctly. We have two options for payments, one through Instamed and one through STI. We currently do not have a vendor.
It's either through Instamed, which is our STIs. We have partnered with them for the patient pay online. So it would either be through Instamed or whomever else you may choose. You can choose another vendor and get a URL, but that would kind of be on your own. But we partnered with Instamed for the pay online option.
Can you clarify the options, since we would only be interested in sending statements via email, not text?
Yep. So Joe, if you want to go back to that slide with the options and pricing. The option 1 is text. So if you wanted email with a reminder, you could select option 2, and that would just do email and the 10-day reminder. Or you could do option 3 if you didn't want to do the reminder, and you would have to do the individual patient consent. and just check off email and not text.
Is it 23 cents per statement and text sent for a patient?
Well, the text is considered the statement. So if, let's say you sent out one individual statement via text, it would just be 23 cents.
Okay. Do you know what the price increase for paper statements will be?
It will be 5 cents come July.
If the patient is set up for eStatements, does that mean they will not receive a paper bill?
Ideally, yes. If they go to the second dunning, like if they don't pay within the first 30 days, then they would get a paper bill for that second cycle. But ideally, that first cycle, they would just get the text or email. And then as long as they paid and it was posted into Practice Manager before that next cycle billing was done, they would only get the text. Now, if the text were to fail to go through for some reason, or the email would fail to go through, at that point, they would get a paper statement. But then again, they wouldn't receive the text either. So you would just be billed for the paper statement that actually went, not the failed text.
There is no option for email and text.
That is the one touch is either or. But if the text fails to go, I do believe that if there is an email option available, it will try that. So if you, let's say you selected the option 1 with the reminder, it tries to send a text and it fails. The patient also provided the email, so it will try their email. If that also fails, it would drop to paper. If the text fails and the email does not, it would stop there. And I believe you would only be charged the 23 cents for the successful email and not the failed text. And then they would get the reminder, and same thing. If the text failed for a second time for whatever reason, the reminder would go via email. And again, you would see in your reports that, you know, that was what happened. So you can update your system in Practice Manager. You can check their cell phone number, or, you know, check it so they only get the email and it doesn't even attempt the text. Hopefully that answers the question.
Can the print/mail statement option be eliminated?
You're saying like print altogether. I don't think so. I think it's kind of a fail-safe to be sure that the patients get the statement, that if the text or email fail, it's going to drop to paper. I do not think we can turn that off, if I'm understanding that question correctly.
What option do you suggest?
It's really hard to say, like, because I think they're all great. It really depends on like your patients. If your patients are pretty good with paying their bills and don't need that extra little nudge, I would say the one touch. But if you feel that, you know, your patients may need that extra little nudge each month to pay their bill, then I would say, you know, based on like, you know, what your patients are like, whether, you know, they're more the ones that would rather a text or an email. Really, option 1 and 2 are the same. It's just a matter of which option it tries first, text or email.
Can you choose different options for each patient?
No, it's the one option per office, or per practice, I guess I would say.
Can you explain again where we will see if a patient opened the email?
That comes in a report. I don't have like a sample report to show you, but you would get a report just like you get your confirmation email report that tells you, you know, you sent 100 statements. You would get a report that would have everybody that was in that batch. You know, you would see, you know, their name, account number, the email address that it's sent to, and whether it was clicked, opened, and, you know, sent. That all comes over in a report, the same way that you get your consent report to that same email address as well.
Would you be able to send a text or email on demand?
If you do an instant statement, yes. That's how you would do it, I guess you could say, on demand. You would just go in, do an instant statement, and it would go via text or email, depending on which option you had chosen.
Even in the consent screen, we can't choose text or email based on patient preference.
You can choose, if you want both, you would just check off both. If the patient only wants text, you would only check text. If they only want email, you would do email. If they say, you know, I don't want that at all, you would choose the does not consent. And if you decided, I will say this too, if you decided to do the implied consent for all, and then you find out you have a patient that comes into the office and, you know, they're not overly happy about that, you can set them to does not consent and leave everyone else as is, and that would the patient consent would override that implied consent. I hope I made sense there.
Okay, going back to the question of seeing if a patient opened an email and that report that's generated, how quickly is that report received once the batch has been generated?
Once you send the batch and it goes through, the whole process in itself takes anywhere from, I'll say, up to an hour to go through, like, you know, depending on how busy things are. From there, you will get that report, I would say, by the next day at most. Usually it's within a few hours, but it could take up to 24 hours to get that report.
Where in PM can we document if a patient should receive text or email?
I don't think there is a report right now that would show, I think the consent report, I'm trying to find out where that is. Patient. And that would you would only be able to see it if you did the consent on the patient screen. But I know I don't know off the top of my head which report it would be that would show it. I would have to look that up. If you want to, you know, leave your information there with Chris, I can get back to you on which report would show which patients have consented.
Lori, I don't think they were concerned about a report. The question was where in practice management can we document if the patient should receive a text or email?
On the patient screen, there's a consent button over to the right-hand side. If you click that consent button, it would bring up that consent screen here, and that's where you would document whether you want the patient to receive statements via text, via email, or that they don't consent. And you would need to do that if you do multiple cases. You would have to choose each case and do it that way.
Okay, Joe, I think that is all of the questions for this morning.
Well, that was a pretty good batch of questions. If there are no more, I want to thank everyone for coming today. One last check, Chris. Anybody else?
Nope.
Okay. If you'd like to view this again, the session today will be recorded and posted on STI's website. So if you want to review it or send it to somebody else to review, you can do that. That'll probably be up sometime this afternoon. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for attending today. And thank you for being an STI customer.
Yes, thank you.